Sean, despite all the diplomacy, despite the nice words between Trump and Putin, the war, the bombs, the missiles, the drones continue to keep flying and continue to take out infrastructure and also harm people's lives.
Yes, Gareth, over the last few days we've been talking a lot about international summits, haven't we? The Alaska summit, European leaders flocking to the White House for a series of meetings. But as you say, the war continues. Last night, as you've seen, drone attacks against Sumy, injured 14 so far. And as you say, tragically, there was one of the children was 5 months old that was injured last night. Kostiantynivka, which is one of those three main hubs of the city in the Donetsk region, glide bombs. There's three still under the rubble there, and they're not quite sure how they're going to fare. And also the Russians are still doing the ground offensive, trying to encircle Pokrovsk. Interesting, you also talked about across in Odesa, there was a gas distribution centre struck. Russia has been attacking the energy infrastructure. Normally, that does it in the winter to try and make life as miserable as possible for Russians. I've been looking at the stats, and actually there have been 2,900 Russia attacks on Ukraine in the last 5 months alone on their energy infrastructure. All of that is not about the population, it's about energy, the industry, because obviously Ukraine is building a lot of drones at the moment, and Russia is specifically trying to stop that happening.
So whilst that's happening on the front line, over in Washington, military chiefs are meeting, and I guess to put logistical decisions against the politics and the policies that have been mooted and talked about by politicians.
Yeah, I think this is quite fascinating, actually. I mean, there's two meetings happening today. One is the NATO chiefs, so that's a virtual meeting. The other one is, as you say, military chiefs of the sort of coalition are willing. Admiral Tony Radakin will be representing the UK MOD at that stage. And it's very clear now there's a more coherence about what the political end state. Remember, all that military can do is deliver a political end state to this. Before these summits of this last weekend, European leaders had a disparate view. Some didn't really want to get involved in security guarantees. Now America has said they are prepared to do that. There is much greater coherence. And I think what you're going to see with that meeting is that the military chiefs are going to have to develop options for their political masters. Political masters have said, right, we need credibility and we need teeth. What are the options? And Tony Radakin will be meeting with his other colleagues there to work out, well, what assumptions are there? What role should Ukraine play? How do we grow Ukraine's own forces to be credible? Over what period of time? And what are the rules of engagement going to be? Because we don't want to get dragged into a major conflict ourselves. And, of course, also the risk, because the more of NATO assets you pour into one country, it fixes them and therefore potentially means we're more exposed elsewhere. But it is a positive sign because actually now, all of a sudden, it's putting a bit of meat on the bones of exactly what the politicians are seeking to achieve.
You've been in that position to some degree, surely, from your previous experience in the RAF. You've flown jets, but you've also looked at logistics and decision-making and leadership and planning and implementation. What's that like, trying to balance looking after your resources and your people and doing what is operationally achievable, but then also trying to fulfil the political will that, let's be honest, the bosses are cascading down to you?
Yeah, a lot of it, to be blunt. I mean, this is not a unique situation, as you say, before we go to Afghanistan, before we went into conflicts that have littered my career and continue to litter the career. Part of the issue is how much risk is prepared to be taken. It's quite one thing, a politician to say, yes, we've got to stop the killing. And we've seen a lot of that happen by our politicians and European leaders, understandably. But actually, what are the military options that have some credibility? Because if you're going to put our soldiers, sailors and airmen into harm's way, you need to make sure you've thought that through. And I think that's where Admiral Tony Radakin, who is a very seasoned warfighter, he's been involved in operations the whole of his career, he's very well placed to be able to put these are what we can do, but here's the risks involved if you do this.
Sean Bell, appreciate it as ever. Thank you so much.